I spent 3 years co-authoring a business case study on the Tata Motors company and their race to produce an ultra-small car that could sell for the price of a scooter and get whole families off the back of a scooter and into a safe and fuel-efficient car. And it was an amazing, amazing story and an amazing adventure. And while I was writing it, I learned about the history of this company, which is over 150 years old now, or nearly about 2 years short of their 150th anniversary. Founded in India by a man named Jamsetji Tata. And he was sort of an industrial Gandhi. In the 1860s and 1870s and 1880s, he looked at India and realized that if India was ever going to be an independent country like the United States or like Japan, they would have to have an industrial infrastructure. And every time he set out to build a hydroelectric plant, the British would laugh at him, and then he would build it. Then he set out to build a steel mill, and they laughed at him, and then he built it. But when they went in to build the plant, they didn't just start building the factory. The first thing they built was a lake, and then they planted trees, and then they laid out boulevards and built a city and built schools and hospitals so that they could train and have all the people they needed ready, the young people coming out of the schools, to work in those factories. And then after those factories were built, people left the factories to become suppliers to the factories, and whole cities blossomed around all the work of this company. They are phenomenal. Today, they're just an enormous, giant company. They remind me a little bit of the Virgin Group. Every time they come up with a great idea, they create a company, and it becomes a success, and they're phenomenal. At the heart of that success is a group called Tata Technologies, which is an innovation group, which is really looking at the future of what the world needs from business, and particularly in Asia, what the world needs from business. And I'm so excited to have with us today the CEO of Tata Technologies, Warren Harris. Thanks.
Thank you, Dane. Good morning, and thank you, Dane, for that very generous introduction. Also for stealing many of the points that I was going to make this morning, so thank you for that. Just by way of introduction to Tata Technologies. Tata Technologies is the engineering services and the product development arm of the Tata Group. We have over 8,000 people that are managed out of 13 geographic locations. We support 25 different nationalities inside of the organization. So although the ownership extends back to India, we are very much a global firm. And although I spend a lot of time in Asia, I actually manage the business from here in the United States. I have an office in Michigan. There's two components to our value proposition. We undertake outsourced engineering services, so we do a lot of product development services for the automotive industry, for the aerospace industry, and for the industrial and heavy equipment industry. And the second component to our value proposition is helping manufacturing companies select and deploy the technologies on which new products are built. Just to give you a feel for the complexity of the work that we actually get involved with. Last year, one of our premier automotive customers in Europe launched a new SUV in Paris. That product was outsourced in its entirety to our organization. So we were responsible for that product from concept all the way through production launch. We had people in the styling studio. We were responsible for the development and the design of the vehicle. We managed the supply chain integration, test and validation. And we also had people in the manufacturing plants helping to launch the product both in Europe and also in one of their transplant plants in China. On the aerospace side of things, we are the first organization in the private sector in India to be trusted with 3 work packages of a business jet. So we're the first organization outside of the nationalized company, Hindustani Aerospace, to be trusted with 3 very complex work packages, the center fuselage, the rear fuselage, and the vertical tail of a business jet that we developed for a European aerospace company. And on the industrial and heavy equipment side of things, we're currently working with a Japanese OEM And we have turnkey responsibility for the development of a new backhoe loader. They are developing the backhoe loader for India, so we're having to balance the price target with the functionality and the capability of the product itself. Our purpose as an organization is to help the world to fly, to drive, to mine, to build, and to farm. And so everything that we do is focused upon enhancing people's lives through the products that we help our clients develop. We're also very proud of our heritage inside of the Tata Group. Dane did a very good job of explaining some of our history, but just to provide you with an up-to-date couple of reference points. The group is made up of over 100 different companies. Each of the companies are independently managed, so each of the companies inside of the group have their own boards of directors. They're responsible for their own strategies. Last year, the group had over 620,000 employees, and our revenues extended beyond $100 billion. And our market cap was also north of $100 billion. So the organization is a very large organization. We have a presence in 6 continents, and 65% of the revenues is derived from outside of India. One of the things that really distinguishes the group, however, and Dane touched on it in his introduction, is the value system that underpins the way in which the 100 companies are managed. The purpose of the organization is to enhance the quality of lives of the communities that we serve globally. And we do that through long-term stakeholder value creation that is based upon leadership with trust. And I think there's a couple of key words that's very important. One is the commitment that we make to the community and by association to society and to the planet. And the other is the focus that we have on the long term. The Tatas are very often referred to as the patient capitalists. We're not looking at a value proposition or a capability in the context of the next 3 months. We're very much looking at how we build sustainable capability over the extended period. The group manages its influence inside of the subsidiary companies through a holding company called Tata Sons. And we have the resident North American director, Jim Shapiro, here this morning. So if you have any questions about the group, or you have any questions about our history or some of the companies within the group, please come and see myself or Jim. Jim, if you want to make yourself known to everybody. Thank you, Jim. Tata Sons, which Jim is a representative of, is actually 2/3 owned by a charitable trust. So 2/3 of the company, 2/3 of the group, is owned by a philanthropic trust. And many of the dividends and the profits that we generate as independent operating companies go back to the trust, and they are used for sustainable initiatives around the world. Many of the schools and the hospitals and the towns, as Dane referred to in India, have benefited from the investments that the group have made. And as we are increasing our international footprint, so too is the group making more and more investments around the world. Dane referred to Jamshetty Tata, our founder. He once said that in a free enterprise, the community is not just another stakeholder. It is the purpose and the very purpose of its existence. So the community is very much the focus around which we run our businesses. And how do we embrace that within Tata Technologies? Well, first and foremost, we take it very seriously. Sustainability is a core component of our strategy. So we spend as much time talking about sustainability as we talk about growing our revenues and growing our profitability. It is managed by a subcommittee of the board. And every year we run a materiality assessment where we look at the concerns of our stakeholders and we compare and contrast that with the impact upon our business. So every year we go and canvass opinion from our employee groups, from our partners, from our customers, and from representatives from the communities in which we live and work, and we categorize those concerns into low, medium, and high concerns, and then we look at the impact of those issues in the context of our business. And again, we categorize those things into low, medium, and high concerns. We typically focus upon the issues that are of most concern and have the highest impact. And over the years, they have initiated or precipitated a number of initiatives that we are involved with. We have an education program that we refer to as Ready Engineer, which we are promoting STEM education in schools and in colleges, and also preparing and readying engineers for the workplace through mentoring and through the provision of software. We're also very committed to diversity. About 13% of our employees today are women, and we have very aggressive targets in terms of improving the percentage of ladies inside of our organization. We're also committed to reducing our carbon footprint. Our facility here in the United States is a LEED certified building, and we're compliant with the BREEAM certification in the UK and in India. So being green is very important to us, and that extends to what we do for our customers, and that's what I'll talk about over the next 5 to 7 minutes. One of the things that we've invested a tremendous amount of time and resources and capability in is helping our clients develop products that promote health and safety, and also help make a contribution to the planet. And I'll give a couple of examples, automotive examples, in terms of where we are doing this. The first, however, I will expose a bias. I'm actually based in Detroit. I've spent the last 20 years in Detroit, and so I am very, very much biased towards the automotive industry. And I believe that the automobile is the defining technological artifact of the 20th century. I recognize there's some aerospace people in the room, and they would probably challenge that. I have some colleagues on the West Coast that have a different view. But from my perspective, the automobile is the defining technological artifact of the 20th century. And I think its familiarity really belies its complexity. It is no mean feat, again, from my perspective, to develop a product that is fast and powerful, and yet it's comfortable, and it's safe, and yet it's affordable. If you throw in other constraints, the fact that it has to be durable, the fact that it has to be easy to repair, the fact that it has to accommodate enough space to accommodate the kids and the family dog, it has to generate enough power to drive the air conditioning units, the infotainment units, the heated seats, the power windows. You can get a feel for the complexity that an automotive OEM and an automotive designer has to grapple with when they are confronted with the challenge of developing a new product. And again, because the automobile is so ubiquitous, the consumer expectations continue to grow exponentially. And not only does that drive a requirement for new features, it also drives an increasing requirement in the context of environmental concerns. Over the last 20 years, we've seen the standards in the automotive industry grow exponentially. Again, first driven by consumer expectations, and then more recently by federal regulations. And initially, those things were driven by concerns about protecting oil and also controlling pollution. But more recently, they are obviously driven by climate change. The automotive industry gets a bad rap in this area. But I think if you take a look at the contribution that's been made, there have been significant improvements. The average mile per gallon of a vehicle in 2007 was 20.8 miles to the gallon. Today, it is 24.5 miles to the gallon, which is a significant improvement. But it's not enough. Carbon dioxide emissions from cars and trucks contribute over 25% to the carbon dioxide emissions globally. And they're a major contributor to the greenhouse gas effect, as Ray suggested before. And it's because of that that the industry has to do more and more. The way in which the industry's tackled this in the past has essentially been focused upon reducing the weight of a vehicle. 20 years ago, a vehicle weighed on average about 3,500 pounds. Today, it's 2,500 pounds. And the contribution has essentially been made through a focus upon downsizing. Even though we've still got some ways to go here in the United States, if you look at the automotive industry and you look at cars globally, there's been a significant reduction over the last 20 years in a vehicle's footprint. But the challenge that the automotive industry has got today is that the contribution from downsizing is starting to reach a limit. And if we are going to continue to take weight out of a vehicle, we've got to look at other means. And one of the areas that we're focused upon and the industry's focused upon right now is lightweighting. Replacing the dependence that we've traditionally had upon carbon steel with alternative lightweight materials. And specifically focused upon replacing our dependence upon carbon steel in the body structure. The body structure represents about a third of the weight of a vehicle, and yet it is the essential condition for a lightweight, fuel-efficient vehicle. I'll say that again because it's very important. The structure, the body structure of a car or a truck represents about a third of the weight of the overall product, and yet it is the essential condition for a lightweight, fuel-efficient vehicle. One of the reasons for that is if you have a lighter body structure, you're able to leverage a smaller engine. You're able to take advantage of a suspension that has less mass. You're also able to reduce the complexity of other automotive components. And so for every pound that you take out of the body structure, there is almost a doubling effect in terms of the weight that you can take out of other parts of the vehicle. Lightweighting is also the enabling capability for alternative propulsion systems. The work that's being done in and around the electric propulsion systems, methane propulsion systems, plug-in hybrids, the hydrogen fuel cell, all of those technologies require a lightweight body structure. Those technologies are not nearly as efficient as a conventional internal combustion engine. And so in order for those technologies to be brought into the mainstream, we need lighter vehicles. And again, that's where Tata Technologies have been spending a lot of time. We've invested a lot in our own IP. We've invested a lot in our own capabilities. And one of the things that we've developed is a methodology that we refer to as the 5 Rs. And very briefly, that's all about developing vehicles at the right price with the right level of performance by selecting the right materials in the right amounts at the right location on the vehicle. We've delivered that methodology and that service to OEMs here in the United States. We've done it in Europe, and we've also done it in Asia Pacific. But one of the other things that we've done is that we've developed our own concept vehicle that we launched at the International Automotive Show in Detroit in 2012. And I'll show you a quick video of that particular product. Although the video was an animation, this is actually a physical product. As I say, we launched it at the automotive show in Detroit, and it was on display in July when Mr. Tata was inducted into the Automotive Hall of Fame. The genesis for this particular product was a conversation I had with Mr. Tata in 2008. As Dane suggested, he was about to launch the Nano. And one of the things that he challenged us to do was develop a green vehicle that was as disruptive from a pricing perspective as the Nano was. And so we targeted a $20,000 MSRP for this particular product. And at the time, the battery powertrain was retailing for about $12,000, $14,000. So you can get an understanding of the challenge that we had to take on. And not only did we have to apply frugal principles to the design of almost every single component, what we also looked at was the entire value chain. So specifically, we looked at the manufacturing approach to the product. And one of the decisions that we made was to take the paint plant out of the manufacturing process, which is typically a very capital-intensive, very expensive part of the manufacturing process. It's also not particularly green. So again, it served the sustainability objectives that we had positioned for the product at the outset. A couple of comments in closing. The recent VW scandal has brought into prominence once again alternative propulsion systems and by association the importance of lightweighting. Even if other automotive OEMs are not guilty of the same games that VW has been responsible for in and around the testing of diesel engines, it is very clear to me and to many people inside of the industry that OEMs will find it increasingly difficult over the next couple of years to achieve emissions compliance, simply because the regulators in different territories are going to be much more rigorous and much more disciplined in terms of driving compliance. What that's going to mean is that all of a sudden, alternative propulsion systems, instead of it being on the periphery of the industry, is going to come into the mainstream. And we are certainly intending to be right at the forefront of that particular change. Thank you.